All right, a new season of the Overwatch League. Pick'ems time. Now, this is going to be week one, so this is basically pure guesses at this point. Now, it wants me to pick two teams to go to the first tournament from the East and the West. I'll do the East first. Shanghai is probably a safe bet. And as far as the second one, it could literally be. It could be. I don't know who it could be. It could be anyone besides probably the Valiant. Provided that they don't absolutely die. So we'll go. We'll just have high hopes and get it wrong because I love this team. We'll just pick Hangzhou. I don't actually believe that will happen. It'll probably be something like Soul or Fusion, maybe. Possibly Hunters. But I like Hangzhou, so we're gonna say Hangzhou, even though I don't have faith. As for the West, I mean it's gonna be tough, but we'll just probably go with Dallas and Gladiators for now. Because I have literally no idea what any of these teams are up to this season. So that's just going to be it. And Dallas did very well last year. Gladiators did fairly well last year. Gladiators, I think, got some good pickups. I would have been tempted to put San Francisco in instead of one of these two teams if Super didn't drop from the team. I know Super is like a really big component of San Francisco, plus like new pickups and stuff. But the Rain could have been a good option. Maybe San Francisco could have been good to put there instead. Who knows? We'll just go with those two, and then we'll go with those two. But week one, let's go. I'm going to go with Gladiators 3-1. Against New York. And Paris versus Shock. I'm going to go Shock. Also 3-1. But I'm going to go with 3-0 on Atlanta, Florida. You know what? No one's going to get swept. No one's going to get swept on the first day. These are all going to be sweeps. I can see it now. It's just going to be 3-0s across the board. I don't know what's going to be played. I'm fairly confident that San Francisco will be able to sweep London. Boston versus Vancouver is an interesting one. Houston versus Dallas could be pretty cool. I'll probably go with Dallas, but I'll probably make it a 3-2 for Dallas. I'd like to see a 3-2. I don't know if it will, but I'd like to see a 3-2. I imagine Dallas could probably beat Houston more times out of 10, but I imagine they could be pretty close, maybe. I'm not quite sure. But we'll come back to Vancouver and Boston because I don't want to talk about Vancouver. Justice and Toronto, New York Excelsior versus Atlanta, and Gladiators versus Boston. I think the Gladiators can beat Boston fairly easily. I think that Atlanta will probably beat New York, and it will probably be somewhat decisive. I have no idea what the Washington Justice or the Toronto Defiant are really going to bring out. I'm going to say that it goes to 5. And I'm going to say that Washington will win. I don't know what these two rosters look like. So I don't know. I think that one's going to be probably closer. It depends on how well Washington don't play. I thought Washington played before this. No, these are just completely new teams. I think if New York wins against Oh no, New York's gonna lose against Gladiators for sure. I think New York could just get boomed this week. But as for the Washington and Toronto game, you know what? We'll give it to Justice 3-2. Well, I don't know what. No, we're gonna give it to Toronto. I don't trust the Justice. I just don't. I don't trust Toronto either. But god dang. And then on the final day, there's Vancouver versus London Spitfire. Mayhem versus Paris. Dallas versus Washington. I'm just going to mark that down as a 3-0 for Dallas. There's no way. There's no way, right? There's no way. And then Houston versus Toronto. I'm going to assume that Houston will beat Toronto 3-1. Regardless of the outcome between Dallas and Houston. As for Florida and Paris, I think Paris will... No. Who's on Paris? Who's on Florida? The Vancouver London is really you're scraping the bottom of the barrel there. So we're just going to give each team 2. We're going to say this goes to 5, and we're going to say that London pulls it off. Vancouver? London? That one really is a coin toss. They did not make these week 1 matches easy to predict. At least some of them. Because you're looking at potentially, probably most likely, the 2 worst teams in the North American region, Vancouver and London, and it's rough to pick between those 2. I don't know what you would actually want to go with. I think I'm going to go with London winning over Vancouver. I don't quite trust Vancouver. Vancouver and London both had 1 win, and London did beat Vancouver last season. But now we're in Overwatch 2, and things are different. Who knows? Who knows? We'll stick with that. And we'll go with Florida versus Paris. We'll go with... I don't know who's on Paris and who's on Florida. Let's go back up to Vancouver versus Boston. I think Boston will probably win 3-1 against Vancouver, most likely. Boston's got some pretty good talent. Most certainly, I think Florida versus Paris. We'll go with Florida. I have no reason to not pick Florida. Florida play Rain, and they're gonna probably get this. If they take a map off the Rain, they'll probably beat Paris. If they just get swept, I can imagine Paris putting up more of a fight or even winning the game. The only ones that I feel absolutely confident on out of this list is probably the Glads New York match. San Francisco, Paris, Atlanta Rain, Florida, San Francisco Spitfire, Glad's Boston, probably Atlanta Rain and New York as well, and Fuel Justice. Everything else is probably a little bit more up in the air. Next week's will probably be a little bit easier to judge, since we'll sort of know what the teams kind of look like compared to each other. But I think we're going to go with this. This is probably what we're going to do. We're going to go 3-1 Gladiators in Gladiators versus New York. Paris versus San Francisco. San Francisco 3-1. Atlanta Reign, Florida Mayhem. Atlanta 3-1. San Francisco and London. San Francisco 3-0. Vancouver, Boston. Boston 3-1. Houston, Dallas. Dallas 3-2. Justice, Toronto. Toronto 3-2. New York, Atlanta. Atlanta 3-1. Gladiators, Boston. Gladiators 3-0. Vancouver, London. London 3-2. Florida, Paris. Florida 3-1. Dallas, Justice. Dallas 3-0. Houston and Toronto. Houston 3-1. And a lot of these 1 points could be zeros. I'm just feeling nice, and I don't think a lot of teams really want to go down at a sweep. The only ones that I really put down as sweeps were ones where it's very clearly like top of the league versus sort of the bottom of the league. Like San Francisco versus London, or Glads versus Boston, or Justice versus Dallas. Things that you would just expect to happen. But with Overwatch 2, you never know. One of these teams could just be a shining gem now in Overwatch 2. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. That's going to be it for week 1 of Overwatch League predictions. Peace.